So any comments from any tables? This is totally volunteer in terms of both in terms of individual and or the group table experience. Anything to share? Sorry, everything's so quiet. Anything?
It was nice to hear everybody's, at least in my table. I liked hearing everybody's sort of tradition, I guess that's what sort of led us. And to some degree, I guess I related a little bit to each story because it was different, especially from the King's or traditional family doing something. Food that's involved in many of them. Yeah, right on. Too bad we didn't have that bit for the food. That's the plate. You better empty. How dare you?
Actually, I thought about bringing something with the plate. Maybe next time. It's a fun. Sticky rice. We have a lot of stories here on this table, so sticky rice. Thank you. Any other tables? Any themes? Anything coming out for this? Yes.
It's very interesting that people did their own meaning making. So whether the object was very valuable or might not be perceived as valuable from other places, if you just saw what someone put together, like an ornament or a picture, it might not be perceived as valuable to other people. But the meaning making that people did made it so special. It was so interesting to take time to do. Whether it was like a library card or an ornament or a necklace or a picture, how that person put their noodles and put the meaning on it, and then how that meaning was transcribed and kind of over continuity kept its meaning. So it was really neat to see it. It was really nice someone commented that we don't often get to hear the background of people because we're kind of so busy trying to do well by other people that we sometimes don't want to know about one another. So it's nice to take that time and learn a little more about it.
Yes, thank you. Any other comments? Yes.
We had some discussion about grandparents and what they passed down, and great grandparents, and kind of where we all came from, and the traditions that exist now and that we support, celebrations and independence and gatherings with discussions and traveling to places that we love on a regular basis, and just really carrying forth into the next generation through journaling or archiving kind of what we really feel is important. In the hope that other generations will do this, that there's many kinds of things that we value that we need to keep going forward. So I think we learned a lot about what our grandparents thought were important and what we think is important too. It's good.
And that actually conversation also came up too, because this table is really rich in terms of a lot of family traditions and so forth. Everyone pretty much bring a piece of an object. And the question is how then we kind of pass that on to the next generation, because it means so much to us, at least here. But what about our children? Do they experience it the same way as we do? What does that mean if that's not being kind of passed on? And so I think that's a great point. Any other comments? Yes.
So for me, I don't know if we had a theme, but I just thought it was really great to hear kind of, and I think that because my mother was kind of a sponge, she kind of, we went to the Baha'i stuff, she chanted for a while, we went to the traditional church, we did lots of different things, and so I think that when I come and so I sat here and I heard everything and I was like, I want to do that, and I want to do that, I'm going to get keys. And I want to take my daughter hiking, and I need to be more traditional. Maybe I need to take them to church every Sunday, and I want a mother's ring. And so I sat here at the table thinking, like, I constantly, I feel like every day, like, I learn so much from people, and I take it all home and, like, dump it on my kids, like, we're going to do this now. And they kind of roll with it, and it's very, so I don't really have that, like, traditional anything. That, to be honest, like there's nothing that's traditional. And I was just telling them how recently my grandmother told my daughter that she was sitting there helping her and filling out her meds, and she told my daughter that my son's problems were because I wasn't spiritual and I didn't go to church and I didn't get them blessed. And I thought to myself, when she said that, my explanation to her is we are very spiritual. Like, I think people should be good to each other, and I hope that tree doesn't, when people hang on branches, my mother used to always be like, that tree deserves to live, right? So those kinds of things I adopted, and those are the things that I find to be spiritual. But my grandmother considers it, like, unless I get up on Sundays and go to church and dress up and wear a big hat, like, I'm not getting it. I don't get it. Like, you don't, you know. And I know that, and I said to her, I believe that people are connected to things, and that helps them in a certain way. Like, people who are extremely religious, or people that follow the letter of the book, you know, whatever the book is to them, that helps them and takes them through a path that's great. But that doesn't necessarily have to be for everybody. And for us, we'll just try really hard to be good to each other in our house, and be good to people when we leave the house, and be respectful, and don't break tree branches because your grandmother will call from Atlanta. You know what I mean? So those kinds of things. And so I don't know, I just kind of grabbed a little bit of everybody's stuff and thought how much I wanted to have all of that stuff for my kids too, and I find that every day. It's a problem. I'm gonna work on it. Make a choice.
All right. Anything else?
I think at our table we discussed a lot about food, again being what brings everyone together, whether it's with the family, whether it's with your clients, whether it's at work here. We have food, brings everyone together. But the importance too of the specific kinds of food to the cultures, and being able to learn that from each other. The other thing were specific items that are very important to cultures. Edna brought over a drum that came from Haiti, and it's very important to her and her family because it's handmade and it talks a lot about her culture. We also have music, which is very important in the African culture that Gwen shared with us, which was very, it's been passed down, and she spoke about some other musical items that were passed down from family, from generation to generation. Her family currently has a couple of them that are very important. I'm sure that kids will be that they will also be fighting about who gets what, or even if it was the rings, the Irish, the clattering, and the importance and how she will how Karen will pass it down to her son, get her son his own ring, and teach him about the importance of that, and being able to continue it with our kids. I think it was one of our common threads there.
And I love, Stephanie's, the eggs decoration for Easter. You use wax.
Wax, yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
It's a Polish tradition of decorating eggs.
And they're beautiful. She bought pictures.
Very beautiful.
And I think also I heard it, already in terms of, the fear of, like tradition stop with me. It's not. So we heard that too, even with the food, because you were saying you are the youngest.
And I'm the only one that makes arroz con dulce and all these things that are very rich to our culture. And I'm the only one left in my family that does that, so I would like to pass that on to my children so they can continue it.
We need to do something. We need to write Ed.
Bring one out of
Well, we can end the communal practice, at least for this round, with a feast of. Yes, I saw.
I was just thinking about how I think it even comes down to minute, or what seems to be kind of minute details about someone's life, where do they kind of geographically kind of grow up. And I went to school in upstate New York, but there's a lot of kids from the city, and so they would walk faster, they would talk faster. We'd even talked about at one point there would be complaints because some of the kids from the city would play their music really, really loud, and it was determined that the city that surrounded them was so loud itself that that's why their music was louder than the kids who maybe grew up not in a place where, that was stuff that came from the individuals kind of themselves, sharing that. And I just think it's really interesting that it even goes beyond just your family or, that person or that person, it's that whole dynamic, I guess.
Well, would you see this exercise can be used maybe in some of your work in your organizations, particularly when you want to bring a group of people together? Would you use this kind of exercise? This is actually it's a very broad exercise, and really, Malika, there's no one way of right or wrong, because the richness is actually whatever that person brings. It could be an object, it could be a description of an activity. Someone mentioned about wanting to develop a journal and how that can be passed on. The idea for this, and think about it if you want to incorporate it, is that a lot of times we don't take enough time to get to know someone else. And I mentioned to my group here, sometimes the flip side of doing this whole cultural linguistic competence and use the word disparities is that people get freezed up because then say, oh, black. They will start thinking about just very broad terms like black, Asians, and so forth. And then even something say, well, what about American? The fact is that if we listen to individual stories and experience, there's always a story about that person. And I think that's kind of the idea of wanting just to find out a little more, taking the time. So this is really, in a very ways, very trite, because again, we're so limited by the amount of time. Normally, this exercise can take anywhere from 1 hour to 2 hours. Depends on how you want to incorporate some of the activities. But just having this as a starting kind of a way of just getting to know each other, and then you can also then incorporate my multicultural self and so forth. It's just a way of, I would say, maybe relaxing and connecting people. Thank you so much. And just so think about it. It's not as